Good evening once again and welcome back to Battle of the Nations Total Recall. We are joined by Joe Booth of the United Kingdom and Lillis Nelson Meeh of the United States. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's absolutely wonderful. Don't forget, guys, that we will be following this for the next hour or so. So any questions that you have, please write them in please write them on the social media pages, on YouTube. You can ask anything that you want, and we'll be answering your questions the whole time. Guys, how is the situation over there? First of all, Lillis, I'd like to ask you, of course, it's a really difficult time, and events have been cancelled, training has been cancelled, all these sorts of things. How's the situation over there in the United States?
Well, I'm in New York City, which is obviously especially hard hit. So we haven't had any practices since March 13th, something like that. So it's been tough, but we're doing what we can. We do a little bit of stuff on online via Zoom, and everybody has tons of resources to work out at home. New York is also famous for having tiny apartments, so a lot of people have been doing some very creative stuff with, just as much as they can do in as little space as they've got. But yeah, everybody's just trying to hang in there and make it through. Some parts of the country have started reopening, so there are a couple of chapters and teams that have started practices again, but it's all very different now. It's not back to business as usual. We're trying to get back to business, but different than usual.
Sure. How about you, Joe? How are things over there in the UK?
Pretty much the same. We're getting together on Messenger, or actually, I've been really busy during this period working. So my sister, who is my vice captain, has pretty much taken over on continuing training. She got a PT in. And has been doing pretty much weekly sessions, because we had some new fighters come in, and we had this really good thing going. We were training up in the north of England regularly, and they, one of them has got a full suit of armour on their way, and we really didn't want to lose that momentum. So I'm really glad that my sister sort of picked up on that, because I couldn't juggle everything. So and also, Sophie, some of us, I did like a workout Zoom thing, but I'm not a personal trainer. I can train in the flesh, but using this technology, which even this call I struggled with, it's quite difficult. Whereas, so we've had a trainer in, and my sister's done that. So I don't know how we're going to pick up where we left off. Like Lillis said, we work with the guys team up here, the Northern Wolves, and they seem to have some big plans coming up, and we work with them. So, I'm hopeful that when the time's right, we're going to have the facilities and everything that we need. But it's just, we don't know when that's going to be, which is the hardest part. Mm-hmm. We can't plan anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What have you been doing to fill your time? Anybody who follows Lillis will have been enjoying some how can I say this, some home decor changes. Why don't you tell us about what you've been doing to fill the time while you haven't been doing tournaments, Lillis?
Yeah, well, my hobby from my hobby is rock climbing, like bouldering. So no ropes or anything involved, just kind of hurling ourselves at walls and then falling off of them repeatedly. But our gym closed because obviously it's a gym; it can't stay open. And I'm out of work because I'm a theatrical technician here in the city, and so I figured I'd put the two together, and I built my own home climbing wall out in the yard. Also screwing around with a GoPro and time lapse and stuff, which is a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And that's kept me really busy for the first month or so, and then since then I've been trying to learn how to set routes on the wall and just climb. It's a good workout. So. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. How about you, Joe? How have you been filling the time?
I've been actually working. I'm a nurse, so I've been working more than since the start of the year. I've been the busiest I've ever been, obviously. But for some reason, I've found more time in the day. I've still managed to start reading. I started painting and doing art, which is I don't know where I'm finding this extra time, but and maybe it's just I need a bit more of an escape. If I don't have the fighting, I've got nothing to consume the rest of the time. But I've been more motivated to work out in the last couple of months than I have been, because that's something I struggle with quite a lot. We train every couple of weekends and we travel so far, and I used to travel abroad to fight almost every single month, and that's just disappeared. And at first I couldn't motivate to train, but I seem to have found my rhythm. I've also been scouring the UK trying to find people that would deliver me kettlebells, and now I just about have enough to lift something. So yeah, that's what's kept me going.
Excellent. How long do you think it will be before things really get back to normal for you, Lillis?
It's going to be a long time here. New York City is, like I said, it's in the epicenter of this whole thing right now, and not only are we harder hit, but the way our city is built and designed is very different. And you can see other cities like Seoul that have huge population density managing the whole thing incredibly well, but the US took a very different route with it, and I think that's put us way behind the curve in developing effective management tools. So I don't expect New York City to be back hosting events until September at the earliest. And in reality, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see any events in the city until January. I know that other places are starting to hold practices and stuff again, and I know that we have at least one big event planned in October for the States, domestically, but who knows, honestly.
Sure. How about you, Joe? I mean, how are things over in the UK?
In terms of events, we've had everything's been cancelled that I'm aware of for the rest of the year. In terms of training, being in the north of England, it's kind of the opposite situation to New York. We've got quite a lot of space. If I brought the club, my club, which is just the women I have together, we could do that when the lockdown starts to lift, because it's a small group. We're really close. We can sort of say that we don't have any symptoms. It's something we can really keep a lid on once, only at the right time. We wouldn't do it too early, but bigger trainings, I think it'll be a longer time before people have the confidence to be in big groups again, which is it's a shame, because the guys that we train with, they were getting a momentum, quite a lot of new people, but it's in terms of when training in a couple of months, events next year. I mean, I don't feel like traveling, even though I used to fly out all the time. I actually, have gone sort of like full circle on that, and I don't really have the confidence to, it's one thing going to a local meet and doing your training, and then it's another thing going to several international airports to get somewhere and your whole team. I mean, because every country is on a different part of this pandemic. So I think that's going to be next year. And I think if we set our sights for next year, then there's less stress. It's kind of stressful getting people to a tournament, but, we've got to get everyone back together, evaluate what we strengthened in our time in isolation, what's got weaker, and build back up to being a team. Before we spend money and time going abroad. So I'm looking next year, and I'm hoping it's early. I'm hoping it's definitely January, because I'm right again.
Yeah, it's hard. We've had, the US is huge, right? Like, I've got friends on the West Coast who I only really ever see at Bohurt events, and it's been really hard and jarring to all of a sudden go from knowing that I'm going to see these people every 3 months to being like, I don't know when it's going to happen again. I'm also watching this fight in the background, and I'm so annoyed at my entire team.
It's not that to put you off. The idea is to give you a bit of nostalgia, but perhaps it's not.
Oh, but look, Bill Jeff Galley is there. He's our captain next BotN.
Okay. Okay then, guys. getting right to that subject of Battle of the Nations, let's start talking about some of your first experiences with Battle of the Nations, when you first went, what your first impressions were. So, Joe, what was the first Battle of the Nations you took part in, or you actually went to?
So technically, I went to Battle of the Nations in Barcelona just as sport, because I was studying at the time and I didn't want to be committing too much of my life when I had my studies. And despite me just going to support, I actually failed the first module that I'd ever failed because I was in the sport and I wanted to travel, and I passed it later. But I went to support, and it was really daunting. I hadn't been doing this sport very long, and I didn't know anybody. I think that was the main thing that I've realised since. I went to this big sporting event, and there's all these people all in armour, so they're faceless a lot of the time. And I was like, oh, this is intimidating. You don't want to get in their way, and that's all you seem to do, because they can't see where they're going, and it's all your fault. Especially coming out of, if you remember at Barcelona, the tunnels, because it's like a Roman Coliseum, so it's a fantastic venue. And yeah, being support was intense. So particularly, it's the first time I'd seen 21s. We can't train that in the UK, so
that was a great year for 21s as well. That bronze bout was my favorite fight of the entire thing.
I think the UK had fought just before that, so they didn't leave sort of like the arena, and we stopped there and watched it from the side of the list. And yeah, I think that was it. Once I got back, that I was still training and competing from then on. But yeah, so that was my actual first experience of the Battle of the Nations. We're not fighting.
Sure thing. Okay. Lillis, what was your first Battle of the Nations?
It was actually the same one, but I was fighting threes that year. I'd been fighting for right around a year at that point, and yeah, it was an amazing experience. I mean, I'm a city kid. Like, I love cities and city venues, so it was kind of the perfect way for me to get introduced to the whole thing. Just because, I had the freedom to walk around, and if I was too much in my head, I could leave the venue and go somewhere and not have to see anybody in armor because they're scary and you feel like you're always in everybody's way. But the venue itself was, I remember that the fighters' kit-up area, we were in the pens that they would have the bulls in before they went out to the fights, and in those pens, there's kind of like an airlock. So you go from the main kitting up area through this airlock where, they'd get one bull and shut off both sides and then let them out into the arena. And in that airlock, there are these big steel panels and doors, and they're just these gouge marks from bull horns. And I remember looking at that before going in and being like, I'm here, I'm doing it, let's go.
Excellent.
But it wasn't bulls, that was fighters. Clawing out.
Yeah. You'd believe it.
Okay. For you, which has been the best Battle of the Nations so far? Which of you, and why? What did you get out of it? Joe?
The last Battle of the Nations, because of the women's mass battle. 100%.
Yeah. We'll come to that in just a moment, yeah.
It is wildly stressful. Me and Hannah from America organised it. I use the word organise. It took a lot, but it was I'm not sure what the word is. It was crazy. It was a crazy few days whilst trying to also captain my own team, fight in 3 different categories. I'd say it was too much. I'd go as far as to say it was a little bit too much, but it was absolutely worth it because the reception from all the women was amazing. I was talking to one of my fighters about it today, because she was saying that is an unforgettable moment. And we tried to, we said we're going to try and do a 21s. That was ambitious. That was ambitious. It's never been done before. On the day, we had, sorry, I'm going on.
That's all right.
On the day, we had more than 21 women on both sides. About 30, we had about 60 women altogether, at least, come in for this mass battle, and nobody, the marshal was obviously being strict because she was saying, you know, you said 21s, I've got to count 21s, which is completely, which is the way it should be. But I was saying, like, okay, guys, I thought there was going to be possibly 2021. There's 30 of you here. We need 9 people off each team to take a step back. And all these women were like, no.
Oh, I remember that moment. It was so funny because, like, she came down and we were, our team, the Finnish coach kind of took charge of making our lines. Joe and I were on opposite teams. And he kept sprinting back and forth, and he's like, 9 people need to step back, and not a single person budged. It was just like the biggest, strongest moment of like the women being like, yeah, we're here for it. We want to be here for it. And
oh wow,
we don't want to go.
Well, there you
it
go.
was only that would step back. Like I said it to everyone. You can see some English fighters. You can see Sophie there at the bottom. And not in that fight, because I said to, you know, all the girls, all the teams that were on my side, I was like, I need some of you to go, and nobody would. And I looked over at UK, who'd walked in with me first, and I was like, you know, like, give me a break. And they walked out because they're amazing, because they're just everything. And they could see me starting to kind of get a bit rattled behind that. And I stepped out. I didn't think I was going to fight in the mass battles. I ended up doing 1 round. I'd sacrificed myself, but I was like, I'm not going to get in this. And then somebody sort of like let me in on last round.
It was kind of a strange one for me because I didn't really understand what was going on, but I was close to intervening because the understanding was that it would be as a sort of all versus all, as they had done in the past, so rather than just restricted to the 21. But it just sort of panned out that way, as it was. And I think, you know, if anybody missed out on the opportunity to do that, it would, of course, be a real shame. Do you think this will be a feature for the next Battle of the Nations?
I think it should be a unique event because it was important to me that the guys had a 10th anniversary thing. The women should have a new opportunity. I think that we should now get as a development, so maybe 10s or something. But what, you know, the thing is with that year is that they said you've got like an all versus all, but you have to organise it yourselves. Now, having only been to Battle of the Nations since Barcelona, I had no idea what an all versus all was, and nobody at any point explained it to me. So I just thought this means 2 teams, 2 sides, and having a number is something that we could work towards. We could count up. We split up the nations months and months before, knowing that there'd be changes, but to give ourselves like a goal, me and Hannah, and working towards an actual number was easier than just splitting people in 2. And it also gave us the opportunity to build connections or establish new connections. So, yeah, I still am yet to realise what an all versus all is. But I think I'd love to see us working towards like 10s.
Yeah,
we had we've done at least one at some H&B Masters stuff. We've done some really excellent mass women's battles.
We did Kenny, didn't we?
Yeah. And it was so good. It was really, really fun and some quality fighting. I would love to. I think you're on the right track, like developing further. Having the biggest mass battle is great. Like if we did do an all v all at the very end, just for the fun of it, that'd be great. But I think having serious nominations for it is also really important. And the reality is that we can get teams that are, you know, sets of 10s or 12s or whatever, and really make it work. I also want to say I don't know if people realize how hard Joe and Hannah worked to get that battle going for us. Like it was like down to the wire. They just kept fighting for it, even when we were all exhausted from the fights the day before, even when they were dealing with other random crap. Like they worked so hard and so well to make that happen. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I've fully expressed how very grateful I am that you guys did that, but like seriously, that was just truly amazing.
I think it's agreeable that it was.
I think.
I think it's really important that it takes this sort of step forward, and that's this is a real possibility for the women's categories in the future. That there will be we could start talking about the 10s or 12s or in the HMB style. So there could be something which comes up as a proposal for it, as we do every year. We have, of course, our general assemblies. So this sort of thing, it can be proposed, and people will take a vote on it. But it certainly seems like a lot of people benefited from that and saw it as a great thing. How do you see the development of the women's categories, specifically the Bohorts, which started off in Prague in 2016 as 3 versus 3? Of course, that's come along leaps and bounds. I've asked this question to a number of the people in previous editions of this Total Recall. But let's hear it from you. How do you see this how do you see the women's categories developing? Lillis.
So there's definitely been some interesting differences between the US and other countries with the women's categories. We have a huge population, frankly, and while we don't normally get the chance to fight with each other too much before we end up at BotN or wherever, we always have more people vying for those slots on the team than we have, than like we've got spots for. And it gets really cutthroat. Like we fight hard to get on that team. But other countries don't necessarily have the same population, which is, good and bad. If you can train together, that gives you such a leg up. And I think that you see that with the English women, actually. I think that the progress that the English women have made over the last 2 years, really, has been just amazing. And it's very impressive to watch. But I think what I would like to see is more mass battles, more tournaments with large women's presences, and I think that the women are all working together really well to try and ensure, before COVID hit especially, there was a lot of talk about what are the events that we all want to go to, where should we concentrate our energy. So that there can be really good women's fights at the events that have space for it.
Sure.
Which is, I think, very smart. And we kind of in the States took a page, again, out of the UK women's book, where we this year sort of went and did our own thing a little bit more than we have in the past. So as a team, we got together and we're like, where do we want to go? And we ended up going to, I went over to Kenning because screw it, why not? And then we went to Mexico together for the HMB Masters tournament down there. And while we did bring a men's team with us, they were a team that was just cobbled together at this last minute, but it was really, that event was for the women. We went and the men came with us. And taking those moves to be independent, I think, is really, really important. And I'm really glad that there's going to be more, women's voices at the HMB meetings this coming year. So I think that's all massive progress. And I think that if we do that, then we'll have more women's teams coming to events as women's teams and not tagging along with the men's team.
Yeah, of course. You never told us, actually, Lillis, which your favourite Battle of the Nations was. I just completely skipped past that. I do apologise.
Oh, I got excited about the 21s. I think the 21s has, hands down, been my favourite fight ever. I think overall my favourite Battle of the Nations was in Italy, partially because we lived so close to the event, so we could just bop in and out whenever we wanted to. And also, I think that it was personally it's complicated, right? I get better at fighting every single fight. I always can look back and go, I fought better here than I have in the past. But I was a little bit disappointed with my own performance at Serbia compared to the way the rest of the field had come along.
Why was that, if I can ask?
I think I probably didn't train hard enough. I also got an asthma diagnosis like 2 months ago, so turns out that I haven't been able to actually run since Italy, effectively.
Wow.
And like the difference now between having an inhaler and not having an inhaler is genuinely night and day. So I'm really looking forward to getting back and actually getting to fight again, because I only found that out after, or I guess a month before COVID, so we didn't have any events to kind of test out the new lungs. But honestly, I didn't train as hard as I should have, and our team didn't get to fight together as much as I wish we had, and the rest of the women in the world are, you know, taking this really seriously, and we need to probably shift our attitude a little bit, and I think we have. I think in this last year we've gone, and started really, really working together as a team, independently, with team goals and team things in mind. Not just, well, you know, we'll fight for the Battle of the Nations slots, and then we'll get to go to Battle of the Nations. And that'll be great. And I mean, again, like, this sounds crazy, but a lot of it is the Swords of Cygnus, like, just being badasses over the last 2 years.
Fair enough there.
Hard, man, like.
Yeah, you got to do it, absolutely, yeah, for sure. Okay. You put
I didn't know we had a
What?
You're like, I took a page from the Swords of Cygnus book. You're right, we should have a book.
No, seriously, we had that chat after the fights in Serbia. It was like, you, me, Hannah, your sister, like, and you guys were like, stop just doing what the guys do. You don't have to do what the guys do. You don't have to be beholden to them the entire time. Do the things that are right for your team, because the things that are right for the men's team aren't going to be right for your team. And we were like, oh, yeah, that's very true.
How important is teamwork for you? You mentioned earlier that it's difficult to, you know, regardless of the pandemic, it's hard to have trainings because you live so far away from each other. Even though the women's categories are the fastest growing in the sport, there's still relatively low numbers of the active participants. Is it difficult to sort of gel together as a team, considering you don't get to train so often together? So.
We're really close. So we have our group chats. We have a number of different groups, but you know, we've identified a lot of similarities beyond the sport, music, other things that, you know, make us, I don't know, everyone's so unique, but we just seem to have some characteristics that really bring us close together. And when it comes to referring that to training, when it comes to like those special relationships are really important. When, you know, particularly I try to get people to build up bonds if they work on a flank together. Everyone needs to be able to work with everybody in every single position, but it is likely that I'm going to put two certain fighters on one side, so they need to be able to identify who they are in that fight and, you know, what their expectations of people are. We'll be able to communicate, and we go through this process of like going on about communication, and then we get these teams that go with these two people on the flanks that go beyond that, and they don't need to talk anymore. It's like you know, there's an assumption. There's a fighter that I work with called Claire on my flank. We worked at Battle of the Nations last year together on a flank. We bawl at each other. We're shouting the whole time, this is what I'm doing now, you need to do this. Whereas, you know, we've got other parts of the team where you can have that kind of like silent conversation going on. So that's really, really important. And so my sister's been doing weekly PT sessions to keep the fitness up, but we've also had video calls just to say hello, just to give people a change of scene, particularly right now. And, you know, we're quite honest about when we're having a great time and when we're having a great time, because that's what people don't talk about. So this isn't just a team, it's not a sport. Our club is so small that we are absolutely a family. I think a lot of people say that about their clubs and teams, but we're definitely that close. They're they are the women that I'll go to first when I meet someone, because we're a team. We are stronger together. So I can offload onto them, and they can share that about him. We've kept up communications. Essentially I'm the captain, and I disappeared for 3 weeks whilst I was working and didn't feel like I could connect with people, and then I just turn up and they're there and they're flourishing, and it's great, because there were times when with the women the sport was so small, I was almost like pestering and bugging people all the time, like, have you done your training, have you done this, have you done that? And some people were like, I don't want this isn't what I want out of my hobby. So it was I've learned a lot as a leader, that this is something that everyone needs to enjoy, and if it's not enjoyable for somebody, they won't stay, and they shouldn't. And as long as we're all having a good time, we stay really close. So we've not had an issue that way. It's just the armoured fighting that's going to be the real sort of tell of what kind of effect this is on us all. Armoured is a thing. It's like fitness. It doesn't matter how many burpees you do, how far you run, how much you lift. You've not been in armour for a while.
Sure. Lillis, how about you? I mean, what's
I totally agree. Like we don't get to fight with each other and train with each other as much as I wish we did. But because we've known each other a little bit longer, I think that we do very much have those same relationships where, the women who are on that sort of top core five who's been there since Spain, like we're really tight. Like we travel the world together. We go on road trips together whenever we can. Right before COVID shut everything down, we were out in San Francisco just getting together for a training to prep for Battle of the Nations and stuff. And we had like a girly movie night. And I think that those things outside of the fighting, where you just get to know each other better, are also really important. But yeah, we do the same thing. There are people and pairs that work better together than other pairs, at least to start, because you can predict each other's. This is a thing, right? In our sport, nothing survives initial contact. Like your best laid plans do not survive initial contact. And so you've got to have like kind of a set of plays that you can fall back on in order to, adjust to the scenario, or like a set of moves, teamwork moves, whatever. But, if you can predict the first 3 seconds beyond contact, then you're already miles ahead of the other team if they can't. And having that partner really, really helps you with that. If I can, rely on my person to make the cut, everybody always thinks I'm going to make the cut. So half the time now I've just got a fast person on one side of me as well, and if they're not giving me a hole, then they're making a hole for my other fast person. My other fast person can go. And then, I can trust them to do that. That's really important. And, you see 2-on-1s. It's all a numbers game. Like, you've got to be able to talk to each other in those moments. I think at Italy, actually, one of our fighters, Lisa, who wasn't there for Serbia, had a girl, I think from this team actually, bent over and was pushing her, and I came over and was hitting her, and Lisa kind of had it on lock because Lisa's strong. And I was like, hey, Lisa, I'm going to leave. And she went, nope, I've almost got her. And I was like, oh, okay. And we just, pushed her right under the rail, and then we were both free and able to go. But it was both my confidence in that Lisa was going to be fine, and Lisa's confidence that I would make the difference in that moment, and also not being afraid to ask for help. Like, you got to be a little bit vulnerable with each other. Like, you got to be able to be like, yeah, no, I don't have this. Stay here, help me, we got it together. That kind of thing. And,
Sure.
that wraps back around to the girly movie nights and to the talking to each other when you're down and being really honest with your teammates. Like,
Sure.
you got to be vulnerable so that when you're actually vulnerable, you can really ask for help.
Interesting point, yeah. Very good point. Battle of the Nations, as we know, is full of challenges and difficult moments. It's not always glory and results. Tell us some about the challenges that you faced, or the difficult moments that you faced at Battle of the Nations. Joe?
Where to start? Well, I'll start at the beginning. Being a captain, getting a team to Battle of the Nations is my number one. We've got a great infrastructure with the UK guys because they've been fighting and bringing strong teams to Battle of the Nations for years. So in terms of logistics, we're sorted what it's we do have this. We have a sort of eliminations process, but it's not been in place for the women because it's been who's available. So it's like who is going to commit to it, and we train together and we prepare essentially. And I'm hoping that we're going to move to a point where it's going to be teams competing for that spot, which makes it gutting for the people that don't make it, but it makes everyone who's in there has obviously fought a lot harder to get there. They're facing the team, which is what is going to make you get through to the finals, which we haven't quite done yet, which comes on to the second hardest part, which I think is like our team jumped in Barcelona. Steph took the UK women's team out. I think the first women's UK team that had gone to the BotN, she had one English fighter called Rosie, and then we had 2 mercenaries, and we went from that to 7 fighters the next year, UK. We did take a mercenary last year. The year before that, the team had really jumped and made leaps and bounds, and we weren't that. I want to say hopeful. We were really looking forward to this like absolute adventure, but we didn't see ourselves as doing that well, and we did. We almost came out of our group. We took little victories, like we took a round off Ukraine, which people. I think that's when people actually looked at us as a team for the first time, because before that the UK women's didn't exist so much as a BotN team, and then people saw that and were like, oh, and we were shocked ourselves. But then I'd say the hardest was last year, because then we've had a year of quite serious training, sport and development, and we didn't get through. And the hardest thing was that I thought we had, and I came out of the list because our last fight was against USA, and I'm sure we had 3 rounds with you, and I think we timed out. We timed out, and we had won by 1 fighter. And in my simple math in my head, we'd won more rounds, more fights than everyone else in the group. So we'd gone through, and I came out and like, everyone, you've done exactly what we needed to do. We're through. Take a breath. I'm going to find out the information for blah blah blah. And then my lead support and a best friend of mine from the male UK team, Barney, came back to me. I don't know why he went to go and check, probably because he had an inkling that this wasn't so. He went to go and check, and he came back to me and was like, took me to the side and was like, "You're not through." I was like, "Well, we're through. We are through." And this is when diva mode kicked in, and I was like, "Actually, we are through." And he was like, I just wanted to go and check, and I've been up to the. He was like, I've been up to the 10. I've spoken to whoever, important people. You're not through because, and he explained it to me, and I was like, wrong, we're through, and I made him go back. And then he came back and he was like, we're not through, and I was like, okay, I calmed down a little bit, and I sat everyone down, and I was just like, you're absolutely incredible, and we're not through. Gave them the news, turned around and just broke. Just like got out of their way and let the girls kind of deal with it on their own. And then I just kind of hid inside Barney's habit and just absolutely broke down. And that was the hardest moment that I've ever, Battle of the Nations or any other tournament, without a and it's with me that. Oh, it's making me upset. That was definitely the hardest thing. Those little. I don't know when something's so close and it's taken away from you, but if we don't get it next time, I don't know what I'll do.
Yes, I remember that well. Lillis, how about you? I mean, what have been some of the more difficult moments that you've faced?
I mean, similar, and also I remember walking past you dudes when you guys were waiting for the news, and that was hard. Like, that was hard to watch, hard to be near, hard to. So yeah, I feel your pain. I think my personal worst for as a fighter though was in Barcelona. We were in a similar position where we'd made it through out of our group, and we're kind of surprised that we'd made it through out of our group. And then we were fighting, I think it was Australia, but don't remember if it was. I think it was. And Australia was 2 people from Australia and a bunch of incredible fighting mercs who I absolutely adore and who continue to kick my ass every time I meet them. But I kicked my own ass in that fight and tried to take a running swing at somebody's calf, missed, and fell on my face.
Oh no!
And at that point, I'd been Ironmanning pretty much the whole time. Like, I'd fought every single round that we had because our team was me as like sort of the small, speedy person, a friend, Shanna, who actually wasn't with us in Serbia, but was in Italy, who is very strong and really good at wrestling because she trains with USA 1 and just constantly gets her ass kicked by those boys. So it's so she's amazing. And normally we had Lisa Gallion, who's big and strong. And when it's threes, you don't have room for mistakes, and you don't have room to not do your job.
Sure.
And I didn't do my job, and I lost a spot in the finals for my team. And like, that was on me. You can't argue that wasn't on me. So, I came off and broke down, pulled my helmet off, and lost it. Especially when you've been training so hard for something for so long, it's really hard to have it taken away like that. But, fight on. Do better next time. I don't think I've been an idiot like that since, which is good.
Well, I want to raise the tone a little bit. I don't want to depress everybody with these difficult moments that you've gone through. That's not the point of this, actually. I apologize. You mentioned something about training with the guys there. Do you guys do you train with the male fighters in Bohorts? How is that? Is it an important part of your training regime? Joe.
About a year and a half ago, I stopped training with the men. For the women in the UK that I was developing, there was I started women's only training sessions where, firstly, I train the women on what women need to know to fight, and also it's in smaller groups, so it gets quite personal. People are at different stages. I've got completely new fighters in soft kit to experienced armoured fighters, and everyone's got different needs, but what everyone does need is to keep their knees intact, which is, a lot of women who have knee injuries. Well, some of them, no, I'd say a couple in the UK that I've come across, it started out against training with guys, particularly guys that are completely out of their, as, I don't know, weight category or whatever. And then when I started this women's training, a lot more women came out of the woodwork, and women came into these trainings, and I was like, I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of our sport because no one knows about it. And they go, oh no, I've not, I've seen this sport, I've tried training in it before. And I'm like, okay, what happened? This is 3 or 4 women who came up in 1 year, and they were like, I started training at a club, and I just came back like bruised and in pain, and it was just like the training methods weren't helpful, and they couldn't enjoy it, and it wasn't to do with the fact that they couldn't, they can't do a combative sport. It was there's quite a personal, I think it's personal, biological, whatever, fighting against men is not natural for women. And when we started opening up this discussion, women were like, yeah, a lot of women have had a past with men. People have had violent experiences. And I've trained with guys for a long time, and I train duels now. I don't train bowhurt because there's no point me jumping in that ring with a group of guys. It doesn't help their training. It doesn't help mine. But I do train duels, and I train pro fighting with them because there's not a lot of women doing pro fighting in the UK. But it's less wrestling than and it's not two people jumping on you, kicking your knees out, trying to get you down. So. And then in terms of the women fighting with men, it's completely up to them. I don't recommend it. And then when they feel like they want to, if they want to get in that ring, or there's a friendly mass battle fight, whatever, it's 100%. I don't goad them into that list. They go if they feel ready. It's easy for me to say like, oh, it'll be fine. I'm 6 foot. I'm not a small, I'm not small. I'm a bridge size woman, so, and it makes a big difference. It's something that I go on about a lot because it's a full contact sport. Full contact sports don't have a mix, men and women's for a reason, and it's I think predominantly it's to do with safety. But when it comes to this quite aggressive part of the sport, psychologically there's something in there too, because I felt it as well. Like I get to a point where I might be winning the fight, or we might be evens, and then even in a duel, if it's against a guy, I'll just regret, start stepping back and losing ground for no reason. And so through that experience, we don't fight with the men. I just need to I try to protect them as well, particularly their limb.
Sure. How about you, Lillis?
I do train with the men a lot, but it's we're not setting up 5 women versus 5 men. I don't think that that's effective at all, and I agree. I think it's dangerous. I think training with dudes does have its place. Duels, pro fights, and to some extent, I think mixed teams in training also have their place. But the biggest mistake that I've seen coaches make is taking the inexperienced guys or the brand new guys or the small guys and saying, oh, you've got the new guys and the small guys, women's team, go fight these guys, and simultaneously insulting everybody.
Yeah.
And then the dudes, whether or not they're trying really hard not to go ham, just go ham. And we've had people get concussions, we've had people get whiplash, just because, like, at the end of the day, I weigh 120 pounds. Even if the freaking, skinny kid at 180 comes charging into me, I'm losing that battle because physics exists. And, like, I might hit the ground way harder than I need to. Like, there's no point in getting injured training. I think that doing mixed teams with extremely experienced guys is really helpful, at least for us. We've done some mixed teams with Iron Phoenix USA 1 for the last couple of years. And that's really great because those guys know what they're doing. And so they'll give us the opportunity to make choices and put us in positions that we might not normally be in. And that's great from a fight brain, from a learning your fight IQ. But it's the experienced women and it's the experienced men, and the purpose is training, and we all understand that. The last thing that I find problematic about training with guys exclusively is that you end up learning to not lose as opposed to learning to win. Because, again, even with the skinny kid, right, I'm not going to throw the skinny kid who's still too tall for me to reach and too heavy for me to muscle around, right? Like, all I'm going to learn there is how to stay on my feet. And I think that when you look at our team, like, our team in general does have pretty good feet. Like, we're pretty good at staying up. And especially Shanna, if you watch Shanna Martin fight in Italy, you'll watch her. She's the one who almost always times out our fights.
Yep.
And it's because she's got such great feet. But you don't learn how to feel for the opening to throw. You don't learn how to manipulate the situation to put yourself in the winning position. You just learn how to not lose.
Yeah.
Which has been our downfall. It was our downfall in Italy, honestly. And it was also, we almost didn't progress out of the threes in Spain because we had a timed out round. And there was like that was the year that all the like figuring out the rules about timeout and like all that stuff happened. And then the change to the new timeout rules happened in Italy. But yeah, it was, I guess in summation, training with the guys has its place. It's not something that should be the default for training women, though, and we shouldn't default to training women the same way that we train men.
Okay.
I agree with all those points, really. We have trained, not so, obviously not recently, but we have had periods, particularly last year and before, where we trained with White Company, and it's been quite exciting. But White Company against, and it's been Swords of Cygnus, and it's a training fight. So, like you say, they've definitely they've made those positions and they've made those moves, and then they're talking us through what to do. They're still being active, and because I remember being in a grapple with one of their fighters who isn't with the team anymore, called Lance, and he was like, "This is what you need to do it." And I was like, "I am doing it," and he's like, "You're not doing it enough. You're not doing it this way." And he gave me so many opportunities. Like, that as a learning experience was absolutely fantastic. Nobody got injured because they knew how to train in this controlled manner. So yeah, I'm not saying not at all, and I'm not saying, we come together with the guys to fight, but then I take the women off, and we do 2 situations, and that 2-on-1 situation, because that's we've always got 3 armored fighters at least, and 2-on-1 situations are perfect because you're there to win. And if you're the one on their own that wins, then you've got a fantastic fighter, and shame on the other 2. But obviously what you're looking for is that teamwork to overcome anything, and then you do 2-on-2, 3-on-2, and build it up once we've got enough, because we've got enough fighters now to do that. But yeah, there is definitely a place for it, but it's the biggest mistake is putting new male fighters against the women, because it offends them, and they do go full hand. They can't not, and they don't know how to sort of pull shots at that point. If you're not trained in how to fight, then how can you train to rein it in? So I absolutely agree.
Fighting beginners is the most dangerous thing. I think we all know that fighting beginners is the most dangerous thing. Like, I've had beginners try and stab me, like, straight up.
Wow.
Because for some reason they come in and they're like, yeah, I know what we're doing, and then like they're playing LARP, and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's so weird, and like they're not even good at that point, so you're not really worried about it. And like half the time you're like, oh, I think that he just like dropped his sword a little bit, and like that was an accident. Like, it just doesn't have control, so you just like parry it away. It's not a problem. And then they do it like 3 more times, and you're like, all right, man, we're stopping for a second.
Sure.
What the hell?
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad management. Essentially, it's people not understanding the full situation of this, and I think it's actually quite irresponsible and careless. But hopefully, it doesn't happen too often. Okay, moving slightly away from the sports aspect of it, and to the tournament of Battle of the Nations. What does it mean for you to have to represent your nation at Battle of the Nations, Joe?
Politically, I've never been much of a patriot until I thought I did sport, and now there's pictures all over Facebook of me with St. George's flags on, and it's something I travel with. So that's been a huge change for me. And even in sports, I wasn't a sportsman before this. So the Olympics, I wasn't. I wouldn't say I supported the UK. I'd taken interest maybe in different sort of bits of sport, but but now it means everything because it's much more personal. It's I think partly because it's been my team. For the last few years, it's been I've captained that team, so their success is my success. And anything that is also sits on me. I know Lillis, said, I had this, there was a fight and I didn't do what I was supposed to do, and we lost that, and that's on me. But I think if you speak to, I don't know if you I would always say that everything is on me. I make the decisions, I put people in the list, I take people out, I guide them on the field, and I train them. So I would say that now it means the absolute world to me. And having relationships with different nations, I don't see people directly, in connection now with their nation, because that's how I've met them. I've usually met them in a tabard, and I've usually met them at a world championship, and we have this really incredible to and fro with the French, which is just become this sort of brilliant story for the men and the women, because it's the easiest tournaments to go to. The French have so many tournaments, and they're getting so well organised. They've got a great federation. So the UK, we're a bit behind in terms of tournaments at home. We can just hop over the channel and get to these French tournaments. So we have like a year or a year and a half of building up this coming and going of who's on top of it, whether it's the league or the fights, and then you get to the nations and you're putting. I'm thinking about that 21s match again, where the men, they lost to the French, then they beat them in the end, and then we had the women's fights, and we were in the French. It was a French-Swiss team, and we were fighting. Then this was in 2018, and we ended up to 3 rounds, and we took on that same. We didn't know the women that well. We had come across them for a couple of tournaments when we were a much smaller team, and still working with mercenaries. And it came down to the wire. It ended up being 1 versus 1 in that match. I was on the floor. I'd been taken out pretty early, and I was just watching from the floor. And it was my sister against. One of the French fighters, and we were just watching, and this is when we still had 10-minute rounds, we were just, we were all screaming from the floor, both teams. I was sat right next to a fighter, and we were just bellowing, and I watched it was on here when Lillis was talking before, and I almost sort of like welled up again, because my sister won in the end. She jumped on top of this woman repeatedly. It was just like anything goes, because Kat at the time, she was a completely new fighter, and she didn't really know what was going on, and the fight stopped. It was our last fight. We won that round. We hadn't got through, but we'd made that last win. It was the first time we'd gone out as a full team, and we were just all around like crying and hugging, and it meant the absolute world. So I think you've got this now. It is patriotic, but it's different. It's not. It's different. It's the people that you're with. It's your community that you're there with. Supporting the guys and being there as one, because we're completely independent in our decisions as a sort of sickness, but we don't go to Battle of the Nations on our own. We go with the UK team, and I say for the women's 5 versus 5s, we have 1 support per woman. that's there. The guys don't get that kind of, in the 12s, they don't get that kind of attention. We've got like a one-on-one, so that everyone is absolutely in order. So maybe we're just divas, I don't know. But yeah, we definitely go out there as a team. There's no doubt about that. And I'm proud of that, Gavin.
Sure.
I feel like it's an important distinction between like not like training with the guys versus being a team. Like we're all still a team, absolutely 100%, all still a team.
Sorry about that. Does it feel that, Lillis, again, the same question, is there any sort of level of, how do you feel when you wear the tabard of the USA? Does it mean a lot to you to represent your country? Is it a culmination of what your training and fights have resulted in? Or is it something for the team? How do you see it?
America is complicated politically. We also have I'm sure this is true everywhere, we have an incredibly broad range of political views in our community in steel fighting here. I think that my answer to this would have been different last year at this time, because it was, maybe not actually, because it was just the Women's World Cup. And what the USA women's team did at the Soccer World Cup last year was amazing. And they used their platform to do things that I think were really, really important, and bring up conversations that are really important. And they continue to use that platform in a really powerful, positive way. So I think last year at this time I would have been a lot more hesitant. I'm proud to take the field with the women who I take the field with. I'm incredibly proud to do that. They're my family, they're my best friends. Like, I will die for them. But it doesn't matter whether we're wearing the USA surcoat or whether we're wearing a different surcoat. It's all the same team. The important thing is them. That said, I've got the flag, the USA flag that we flew at my first BotN, folded up on my bookshelf. And it was a flag given to me by a retired military member of our team.
Right.
And so it's really complicated. Our country's currently on fire. Like, literally right now it is on fire, and that over police brutality against black citizens, and that is so messed up. So it's not about what our country is doing, but it is kind of about the American dream, Like, I come from immigrant families. Like, nobody in my family came over on the Mayflower. Like, I'm third generation at the furthest from being an immigrant, and we have so many amazing members of our team who are people of color. The New York City team in particular is I think it's majority people of color at this point, which is utterly amazing. And I believe in them. I believe in the things that we can do, even if I don't agree with things that the flag is flown over. So I'm proud. But since then, like I said, the USA women's team at the Soccer World Cup, they're using their platform, and they can go out and represent the country and be proud to be American without being part of the problem. They can use their place of privilege to do good work.
Sure.
And I'm proud of that. So if they can go out and wear the flag, then I can go out and wear the flag and be incredibly proud of it.
Excellent. Wonderful answers. Thank you, guys. On another aspect of Battle of the Nations, changing it once again, the historical camp. It's the more social aspect of Battle of the Nations. How important is that historical camp for you guys, Joe?
I think from a fighting perspective, when it comes to the accommodation, think from now on I will be, finding somewhere to stay, because I feel like before it was part of the lifestyle, and I could definitely, it was the excitement and it was the adventure of going to Battle of the Nations. But from that point of view, now I take the fighting so seriously. A good night's sleep and a hot shower and hot food is definitely going to take priority, because I think it will strengthen my resolve. But it has been, it's been fun, and I like the way it's set up. I like, particularly when they have the Smiths that you can go to for repairs. I think that's a really important aspect, because we now understand, the armour's getting more historical. We understand it as a piece of armour. It's not to be taped up, and sometimes you've got to do quick fixes, but in between then you can't take your whole repair kit with you. So that's always been quite a big part of the UK camp, is having that sort of like repairs available there. It's a big part of the sport. Like having an armour failure is something which I don't condone in my team, and that sounds awful, but I don't. And I just find it completely unacceptable, particularly when you're at a certain level and you've been fighting so long. So that's actually really important. And I do like the shops. I mean, I've just been to I go to Russian tournaments, and they always have like a really good historical camp, and I spend my time off from fighting going around and seeing other parts of the sport, and particularly at Recon, I've not seen real Viking reenactment before. I saw HEMA, I saw, and the soft, really, competing in full swing in bowhead and in 1v1s. And I have to mention this full plate dueling. If I had another few £1,000, I'd be getting a full plate set of armour, because I think that looks amazing. There was one female fighter there as well, which was fantastic. And they were all brilliant. And I felt like one of the guys tried to give her an easy time, and he shouldn't have done that. He massively investigated her, which was lovely to see. So I think that's fantastic. I like the music, the gestures. It all gives you that sense of, it not just being a sporting event, that you're in another world. I wouldn't say I really come to the sport for escapism, like some people do use their hobbies for that. But you get to the places, you get to the venues, and you're like, some people will never get to see this part of the world or experience what we get to experience, and we get to fight in steel and have like a really lovely time. So I'd say it's a really important part of it. I couldn't imagine it not being there, I guess.
Sure. How about you, Lillis?
Yeah, I mean, I come at it from the athlete perspective as well. So I will probably never stay in the medieval camp, just because hot food, good bed, quiet sleep is very important. But I think it's a really important aspect. My first BOTM being in Barcelona, we were so far away from the camps that we didn't really get to appreciate it very much. And then in Italy, it was really cool to be able to finally go and check it out and see what all the different teams are doing and like how amazing that is. I also think that like if I were a support person, it would be really attractive to me to be able to like do the whole historical camp thing if I wanted to. And I don't know about you, Joe, but I've wanted to be a knight since I can remember. Like literally like in the arms and arms section of the museum, started horseback riding because I figured that was like the best way to start. But that's the kind of thing that as a kid, that would have blown my mind. Like I would have been so happy with that and just so stoked, and I would have, oh man, I'm getting excited just thinking about how excited I would have been. So I think that it's really important for our audience as well, like it's it's amazing that we get to do this sport and then have a reenactment level to it as well. Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, I was really reticent at first to start wearing garb and like being garb as support and that kind of thing. But you know, I'm coming around to it. Like, garb is fun, turns out, and like, gatekeepers be damned. Like, don't let anybody tell you that your garb or your camp isn't good enough. Just go and do it, and the cool people will help you get better and give you resources, and the jerks will be jerks, and you can just tell them to screw off. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm not going to be historically camping anytime soon. Also, I can't imagine how expensive it would be to get the gear there from America, but I do think it's really fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome.
When they put me, when I went to do the support on the first Battle of the Nations, I was like, they're like, you need to sign up through the website to get your registration, even as support. And you have to send in pictures, and you have to wear historical gear. And I was like, what does that involve? What can I get away with? And they're like, you're going to have to wear a dress. And I was like, you can't tell me to wear a dress. This was a huge fight. This was a huge saga in my first club. They're like, you've got to put a dress on because it's historical. And I was like, this is the 21st century, actually. And you can't tell me to wear it. It's stupid. Anyway, I wore a dress after a lot of fighting. And I also, and they were like, you know, I was looking up medieval dress. Have you Googled medieval dress? Horrific. The results are awful. They're authentic. And I was like, what about this with all these wizard sleeves? And they were like, no, you won't pass in that. And I ended up getting a authenticity guy from the Netherlands, Yorick. I got diverted to him because he was the only guy that could communicate with me, and I would like, and he was just so great in supporting me. And I could send him the dresses before I bought them and got them like posted over here. And he was like, that one, okay, it's medieval. It's essentially medieval underwear, but it's the only thing that you've let me go with. And I'm like, it is. What we'll go. And it was a massive thing for me. And now, like, if I wasn't spending all my money on armor, I would have like a real fancy medieval get-up, because when they do the best dressed, some of these things look fantastic. And Marjorie Edwards, every single time I'm stunned by what she's wearing. But no, every time I get a spare bit of cash, I seem to need an upgrade to a new fashion or an actual.
She's got that French heraldic dress, right?
Yeah, the red and blue one.
Oh man, Joe, you got to do the same, but with English heraldry.
I've seen someone. I'm not sure if she's a fighter. I think she does fight, but I don't know if it's in HMB. And she's got a red and white dress, and it's got a red lion on it, which is obviously quite British in itself, but that looks fantastic. But me dress,
I don't know, I just feel so impractical. I don't think, like, half the time when I'm playing support roles, like, they're like, who's fastest here? Lillis, sprint over there. I can't do that in a dress. What are you gonna do? Hike up my petticoats? Like,
you have to pull it up in over the belt. Like, I've had to do that at the Battle of Nations in 2016. But I have actually had one dress made, but it's in Estonia, because I left it at Battle of the Nations in a rainy straw-filled tent, and somebody took it home for me, and I haven't retrieved it yet.
Oh man, what a day that was!
Like, as long as my armor got back in one piece, and
as long as your armor didn't float off.
Oh, wow, that was it was like rising up through the straw.
Yeah, that's something that's set out the last Battle of the Nations. Joe, you should actually let me know who's got that dress, because I'll be going to Estonia. Of course, I'm just next door in Lithuania. I'm 2 doors down, so I can probably bring it back to the UK for you. There you go.
Would you really help? Then I can get back into the support along.
Excellent. Okay. I'm going to finish off by asking one simple last question. Now, we've spoken a little bit about, you know, the medieval dress and everything like that, but there's something which I've really, really enjoyed becoming a kind of trend, which is exactly, you know, which is right up my street. Guys, undercuts, yes or no?
I mean, yeah.
Why did you have to ask? I've grown mine out. Where is it? Look at this.
Oh, is it just a little bit weird right now?
Oh, brilliant.
So it's like the nightmare because I have to put my hair up for work.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going on there. I absolutely loved it. And I was almost going to get a tattoo on the side of my forehead as well. But alas, it is now grown out. One of my teammates, one of my new fighters the other day said, when I turned up to training and saw you all with undercuts, I knew I was in the right place. Something to recruit.
Yeah, so I just had to ask that question because I'd seen them become more and more popular, and because, you know, obviously my head's shaved at the side as well, and I was just really happy to see them. So that was just purely for my own satisfaction asking that question. There's no real bearing on Battle of the Nations or US fighters at all, but I just had to ask them. Guys, okay. That has taken us to the end of this edition of Battle of the Nations Total Recall. Lillis, Joe, you're just amazing. You're such an inspiration, and it's really, really good talking to you and getting, you know, some of your deeper feelings about some of these aspects of Battle of the Nations. And it just would never be the same without you. And I really can't. Last time I saw you was in Kenning Street in the Netherlands, and of course I really can't wait to see you again next year at Battle of the Nations. It's going to be absolutely epic. Where do you think it will be? Where do you hope it will be?
Oh man, I forgot what the options are.
Okay, in that case, I'll change the question. Where would you like it to be?
Right down the road.
Where do I want to? England too. I'd take anywhere in the UK.
Hmm?
Yeah, let's go with the UK.
Yeah, UK.
Yeah,
everyone will speak English.
If we're on home ground, then maybe that'll be what we need. You know, that sort of that team behind us to get us through to that next round. So, yeah,
exactly.
And castles. We got some really good castles.
Very true, very true. Yeah, that would mean I would actually go back to the UK as well. There's a point. And I could maybe change my role from commentator to live announcer, which would be cool. Anyway, guys.
Real talk, I would love to do it in France at some point. I'm very jealous that you all get to go over to France for all those events. But yeah, UK.
I thought France would come up already. I'm expecting France to possibly be not too much in the distant future, because I think that would be a great location. They've got the space, and they've got the federation in place, which is ready to go.
Excellent, guys. Thank you very much. To all you watching now, it's a very good night from me, Lillis, and Joe. Take care of yourselves and join us again for another edition of Battle of the Nations Total Recall. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye to you all.
Thank you. Bye.